Welcome to the Third and Central podcast, the only podcast dedicated solely to the University of Louisville baseball program. This is Matt Sefcovic, and as always, I am joined by Aaron Turner on this Easter Sunday night. Aaron, I hope your family and yourself had a good Easter. Appreciate you making time to come on tonight and talk a little Louisville baseball.
Yes, sir. Same to you. Happy Easter, and I'm excited for this episode. There's a lot that's been going on lately. Some good, a lot not so good, but we'll take a deep dive into that here shortly.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. Last time we talked was before the Wake Forest series, and we'll kind of talk about that here in just a little bit. But first thing, a couple things I want to touch on. This is, for me personally, kind of like the pinnacle time to be a sports fan. We're wrapping up the NCAA tournament. The Final Four is just teams that just won the regionals are going to the Final Four. We've got Connecticut, Purdue, Alabama, and this magical run that NC State is on after beating Louisville in the ACC tournament just 19 days ago, which is just wild to think about. So you've got the NCAA tournament progressing into the Final Four. You got college baseball, which we obviously love. We're kind of get into the meat of conference play. Major League Baseball started this weekend, which we're definitely going to dive into that because that is right up your alley. But for me, there's no better time than right now because you've kind of got those three sports colliding, which is pretty rare. This is really the only time of the year that all three of those sports mingle at the same time. So it's hard for myself as a fan to decide what I'm going to watch because I turn the TV on and there's so many options. But that's why there's not a TV behind me here because our bedroom TV has been moved to the living room. So we have two screens going at once. But I know you're kind of like me. We've been texting back and forth lately and be like, hey, this game's in the top of the ninth. It's a tied game. And you'll text me and be like, hey, this is in the bottom of the ninth and they've got runners on second. So, we kind of are bouncing back and forth and, trying to pick the best thing at that time. How have you been balancing that? Because I know it's just a lot right now. I want to watch everything, but it's not really possible.
So you got the living room TV going on one game, you got the laptop going on another game, got a phone going on another game, and I also recently just purchased a second monitor for work, so I've been taking advantage of that a little bit. So just as many screens as possible. Also bit the bullet this year and paid for MLB TV. First time owning that. Been an awesome investment through opening weekend. I've absolutely been glued to Major League Baseball stuff I wouldn't even really have watched in the past. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to turn that on. It's been very, very exciting, and I'm looking forward to the rest of college baseball season, minor league baseball, Major League Baseball. It's all finally here, and it could not be any better.
So what you're saying basically is you're just an ultimate sports guy. Like you've got all these screens, you're buying all these packages and stuff, and that's what you have to do now to follow everything. So, but kind of in the same boat, just trying to keep up with everything and balancing it. But the most importantly, obviously, is Louisville baseball. As we transition into that, though, I do want to talk about something that I kind of had an epiphany about today as I was watching the two teams cut the nets down as they won the regional to go to the Final Four. Kind of seemed like an odd thing to me to do. We've been doing it for years. That when a team wins a regional, go to the Final Four, wins the national championship, they cut the net down. That's kind of tradition. We don't have anything like that in baseball. They dogpile, but it's just a celebration. Then it's done and over with. So my proposal this year is that if you win a regional to go to the Super or the Super to go to the College World Series, that we're going to bring a shovel out and you get to dig up home plate and take it with you. Because we need something for these guys to celebrate. That we need something silly in our sport like that college basketball has. So this year, I'm going to start a campaign that we're going to start digging up home plate, and the guys can take that home with them.
I love that. I would also say that you and I have spent way too much time talking baseball together because as soon as you brought up the Nets, I knew exactly where you were going. I knew that he was going to say dig up home plate, and sure enough, that's where you went with it. So, you always hear us talking about how we pretty much agree all the time, and that is just absolutely true. I feel like at this point, doing this for this long together, I feel like we've got one brain.
My first thought was, just take one of the bases, but those are too easy. You just go over and lift it and take it out. I'm like, make them work for it. Give them a shovel, make them, pass the shovel around and dig it out. And I mean, heck, if you've got a guy like DJ Burns, it'll probably take him 30 seconds to get that thing out of the ground. Dude's an absolute horse, and he's been fun to follow during this run. But let's go ahead and switch directions and talk about what we know best, which is Louisville baseball. So last time we talked, like I said, we had just knocked off Bellarmine at home, and we were preparing for a big series with Wake Forest. So since we last recorded, Louisville has gone 3-4 in that span, currently 17-11 overall, and 3-6 in conference play. Just lost the series this weekend to Florida State, which dating back to last season is now our 9th straight conference series loss since last year, which is just brutal. And unfortunately, it's not going to get much easier. We'll kind of talk about the weeks ahead here towards the end of the podcast, but this is a gauntlet. This is a stretch right now that not many teams have to go through in a collegiate baseball season, but Louisville's right in the thick of that. They are 3-8 in quad 1 wins. They're 3-2 in quad 2 wins, and 3-4 combined. They are 11-1. So 11 of their 17 wins currently come from 3-4, which resume speaking, that's not where you want to be. There's still a lot of baseball to be played. There's no doubt about it. At just a third of the way or so through the conference schedule, there's still a lot of opportunities, but at some point in time, this team has to start stringing some quality wins together, because when they start looking at the resume at the end of the year, you can't just have a bunch of quad 3 and quad 4 wins and make the tournament. We saw that last year. That sums up last year's team. They beat everybody they should have beat, but they couldn't beat anybody in conference. And that's kind of how this year has started, unfortunately. We've seen coaching staff continue to play with the lineup. And I think that just shows that at this point in time, there's not a set of core guys that have stood out that have demanded that playing time, which when you're a third of the way through your conference schedule, that's not really where you want to be. You should have a set lineup or a set nucleus of guys at this point in the season. So let's go ahead. Let's just talk about the last set of games since we last talked. Walk us through Wake Forest. I know going into that series, Wake Forest has as we referred to them, a 3-headed monster on the mound. But you and I both actually felt pretty good about going down there. It didn't turn out our way.
Yeah, funny enough, we did feel, somewhat confident, and you look at all 3 games, and there's definitely times during that game where you really feel, hey, we could have won that game. There were a couple moments from the 2 losses that you kind of feel like the game just slipped away from us. So just a quick recap. Thursday, Friday, Saturday series at Wake, you lose 16-7 on Thursday. Lost 5-1 on Friday, and then salvaged game 3 on Saturday with a final score of 7-3. You open up the series on Thursday, go down early, and just like we talked about, Josh Hartle with those early struggles. You got to get to him in the first few innings before he settles in. And sure enough, we go down a little bit, and then Luke Napleton comes up, hits a massive grand slam, ties the game up. The lineup did what it had to do early on. You got to attack Hartle. He was able to settle in as the game went on. I believe he went 6 and was able to get out of there with a somewhat decent looking line after a rocky start. Corbett looked really good out of the bullpen for Louisville. Was very, very pleased with how Caleb Corbett looked when he came into the game on Thursday. Unfortunately, I just think that he was left in for a couple batters too long, and that line does not look as good as what it started out to be. I think that Caleb Corbett's been pretty consistent so far this year. I think he's one of the more reliable guys out of the bullpen, and seeing him show up big like that at Wake was definitely a key step forward for him as well. But after he gets charged with a few earned runs, 50 plus pitches into an outing out of the pen. Team kind of just deflates after that. Offense couldn't put anything else together. And that's how you nearly lose in mercy fashion after what was once a close game. So then you go into Friday, 5-1 final. That was an incredible game. As you know, I'm a big pitching guy. Loved watching Evan Webster and Chase Burns go back and forth, throwing up zeros for the better part of the game. And then Zion Rose breaks out in the sixth inning and puts the Cardinals up 1-0 on a home run off of Burns. And you're feeling pretty good all of a sudden. But, for to continue to ask Evan Webster to go deep into games like he really hasn't before in the past is just something that's, not a fair ask of him. He's been lights out whenever we've needed him to be lights out. And just once again, that game slips away from Louisville. Bullpen can't keep it together. Offense didn't put anything else together. Like we said, Chase Burns was going to be an incredibly fun watch, and he delivered. He plays the game with a lot of emotion. I had a lot of fun watching him pitch live for the first time this year. I think the big question mark in that game that a lot of fans had, including myself, is we've talked over and over about the lineup changes. You have Luke Napleton hitting a big grand slam on Thursday. Come Friday, he finds himself out of the lineup. So, you ask yourself, what's going on here? What more does he need to do to earn that playing time? And then you go into that Saturday game, dropping the first two, probably a little bit defeated. I think that we put out what was our best lineup of the weekend. We needed to win that game. Dan puts out the lineup that I probably feel was going to put together a nice game. Riley Phillips fills in for Patrick Forbes on the mound. He looks pretty good when called upon. I've been a big fan of Riley Phillips and that senior veteran leadership that we've gotten from him. JT Benson hit a home run in the middle innings to kind of bring us back into the game we were losing for at one point. And then Benson comes up in the sixth, ties the game at 2-2, and then everything just kind of starts to click from there. Offense tacks on a few more runs. Tucker Biven comes in, works a couple really nice innings, gets himself into trouble, and works right back out of trouble. So I think that there's a lot of key talking points to take away from this series. But I think the first one I'll start with is you see Biven late in that game to close out a win. Is Tucker Biven potentially the closer?
No, I think you bring up a lot of good points, and we'll talk about that a little bit more in the Florida State series also, because I think right now Tucker is the guy in the back end of the bullpen. If you tell me, hey, we've got a 1-run lead in the bottom of the ninth inning, who's your pitcher? If the entire staff and the entire bullpen is available, Tucker Biven's the guy that I'm going to roll out there on the mound. I think he's been the most reliable. He's thrown 14 and 2/3 this year so far. I think he's only given up 2 earned runs, if my memory serves correct. And he's kind of been a dog at the back end of the bullpen right now. He's the guy. If we need 3 outs to win a baseball game, I think he is who Dan and Roger are going to call on the most. One other thing I'll touch on with the Wake series is, at that point in time, Wake was really hot. Their pitching stack has dwindled down a little bit. They haven't, lived up to the hype that they received in the preseason. They've had a couple injuries, but right now, Wake is 17 and 10. They just got swept by North Carolina, and they are 4 and 8 in the conference. So they beat Louisville 2-1. So you take that out, they are 2 and 7 against the rest of the conference. So, you feel like when we look at the resume at the end of the season, I think this is probably one of those series that you look back and you think, wish there was a way we could have won one of those other games to take the series, because, all of a sudden Wake isn't the wagon that we thought they were going to be. And what does that team look like going forward? And how does that impact Louisville's resume as we get down the stretch? It depends on how Wake finishes their season as well.
Like you said, you wish you could have salvaged another game because, going back to the beginning of that breakdown, I was talking about how, we were really in a position we could have won all three. There were points during Thursday's game, Luke Napleton hits a grand slam, ties the game up. Everything is going Louisville's way, it seems like, and just can't build on it. You let Josh Hartle get back into the game, find his rhythm, and then the Louisville bullpen collapses from there. Friday, you take the lead on a Zion Rose home run. Evan Webster's shoving, giving everything that he's got, and just could not piece anything else together. Just a couple small things that add up to larger things that add up to losses that, quite frankly, probably should not have been losses.
Yeah, I think they've had a couple head scratching losses this season that I think as we get down to the end of the year, we can look back on and say, there's a couple games we can circle and say, okay, Louisville should have won that game. And all of a sudden, our 17-11 record should look like something like 20-8. I think if we're 20-8 right now, we have a completely different outlook on the season right now, just off 3 additional wins. So those wins would go a long way. Speaking of wins, on Tuesday night following the Wake Forest series, Louisville did host Cincinnati, an old conference foe who is making their debut in the Big 12. That was a bit of an odd game. It was a fun game. After the 4th inning, the majority of the runs were scored. It was just a shootout in the first, or I'm sorry, well, really the first 3 innings. It was a shootout. It was a tied game, 5-5, and then Louisville scored the final 6 runs of the game to win the game 11-5. But just an extremely odd set of events happened. Colton Hartman started, freshman, kind of one of the anchors of the freshman class this year. He gave up 5 runs in 2 1/3. Just hasn't been able to settle in like we thought he would. But he's a freshman. He's got plenty of time to learn because that kid's a stud and he's got a bright future ahead of himself. But he struggled early on, gave up 5 runs, but then the bullpen they picked him up and finished the 6 2/3 behind him. That was Carson Liggett, Webster, Detmers, and Justin West. The offense pounded out 15 hits. Hoy, Beard, and McCoy all hit home runs in that game. It was just a really fun game. A lot of runs were scored, and it's always good to beat an old conference opponent like Cincinnati. That's a team that we've kind of struggled with over the years. They've had our number the past couple of times we've played them, and they're down a little bit this year. But as of right now, that they're still top 100 in the RPI, and if they can continue on that path, that just gives Louisville another quality win. So if that teeters over to quad 3, all of a sudden that hurts our resume quite a bit. So we need to cheer for Cincinnati to continue to win some games this year, because that, in the end of the day, that's going to help our resume. So after that, Louisville headed down to Florida State, and we've talked about Florida State. You and I have for a number of years. Louisville we just struggle every time we go down to Tallahassee. It's just a challenge. Since joining the ACC prior to this year, Louisville's 2-7 down there, and now we're 3-9 after losing the series 2-1. But it was again, like Wake Forest, a couple games that I thought Louisville had a chance to win. On Friday night, they were going up against Cam Leiter, who hasn't been spectacular this year. But if you recognize the name Leiter, obviously the whole family, they've all pitched in Major League Baseball. But Leiter got lit up in his past couple outings against Notre Dame and Clemson. They tacked on 10 runs against him in 9.1 innings. So I thought Louisville had an opportunity here to really jump on him and get to the bullpen. And Florida State doesn't necessarily have the best bullpen in the country. So I thought Thursday night, this was a Thursday, Friday, Saturday series, just like the Wake, I thought they had a chance to win Thursday, but Florida State had other plans in that one as well. Louisville jumped on them early, took a 2-0 lead, but then Florida State outscored Louisville 8-1, the 3rd through the 9th inning. So big crowd down there, 4,800 people on Thursday. They saw 5,300 on Friday, and then just over 6,000 on Saturday. We all know they love their baseball down in Tallahassee, but that's probably one of the rowdiest environments that Louisville's going to face all season. But after they lost the first game of the series, you really look at the second game. You've got Jamie Arnold on the mound for Florida State, and this guy is just lighting it up this season. He was top 10 in the country in strikeouts. I think he was number 1 in the country in ERA heading into the game. But this was a really odd game for the Seminoles. They committed 4 errors, and of the 5 runs that we scored in a 5-2 win, we only had 1 earned run. So they kind of threw the ball around the field. Third baseman kicked it around a couple times. So Louisville was able to take care of a couple of the Seminoles errors and win the game on Friday, which set up a rubber match on Saturday between the two. Before I talk about that, I do want to touch on Evan Webster because you talked about him earlier. Webster and Biven absolutely shoved on Friday. Those two only allowed 9 hits, 1 run, and struck out 9 batters. And they really didn't give the Seminoles a chance to really barrel up any balls. It was, like you said, Biven was the guy. Louisville was in a situation at that point in time on Friday that we had to win. You've got to win this game to win the series. They rolled Biven out for the final 3 innings, and he closes the door and gets the job done to set up the rubber match on Saturday. So flash forward to Saturday, Louisville comes out. They get beat 9-4 to lose the series. They were competitive, got 10 hits, but they really, to me, just did not have any energy. They just looked really flat, made a bunch of mistakes. I can't remember, 4 or 5 wild pitches. They were just kind of all over the place. Gavin Keelan, there's a play at the plate, bang, bang play on a throw from first base. He doesn't know the ball's coming to the plate, so he just runs through it, doesn't even slide. Just lack of awareness there. It just didn't seem like mentally they were prepared. I don't know if the environment was too big. I don't know what was going on, but they just did not seem to be prepared for that stage at that point in time on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, could not have said it better myself. It was like I said back in the Wake series, you see those games as, there's the opportunity right in front of you to, grab the momentum and take it and run with it and put the game away, and just can't come up with the big hit or the big pitch, and then it starts to spiral from there. And so, that's how you find yourself losing 9 ACC series in a row. Just can't quite put it all together right now. One thing that really sticks out to me right now is the emergence of Zion Rose in the outfield. That's, something that we never really talked about as even being a possibility at all up until right now. We've seen him in center field. We've seen him in left a couple times. You look at, what we thought was going to be the outfield core. We keep talking about how we always thought it was going to be Benson and King and Humphrey. Now you've got Lucas Moore, Corbin Dickerson, Michael Lippy, and then you throw Zion Rose into the mix, which is great. The kid can absolutely hit. Sets us up well next year too. It's just when you've got 7 capable outfielders, and we're gonna keep talking about this and harping on it over and over, just because I do think it's that important, is just still not being able to find the right lineup.
Yeah, I think that is something we've talked about on here time and time again. Like you said, we're probably going to continue to talk about it on here. We've texted back and forth about it. Having that consistent lineup really helps the guys get into a groove and get used to playing with each other. I think until they have consistent at bats, it's hard to have consistent results. I do want to go back and touch on something you mentioned because this is really important. It made a big impact on the game on Thursday against Florida State. Florida State had the bases loaded. They hit a grand slam. Louisville loads the bases. We go strikeout, ground out. Don't score a run. That's the difference. You don't have to hit a grand slam. I mean, that setting that bar, you're setting yourself up to fail. But hit a lazy fly ball somewhere to get a run in. Shoot a ball in the gap somewhere. I think we have to start just taking advantage of these opportunities that we're given. We continue to talk about that lack of timely hitting, or that one extra error that we make, or that wild pitch that we throw into the dirt, or you can take your pick. And I think the pitching staff has taken a large brunt of the team's not doing as well as they have in the past. Right now they're saying, oh, pitching staff, the ERA is inflated. They're taking a large brunt of this, but you can also look at base running. You can also look at the lack of timely hitting or the batting average in conference play. So there's a multitude of things that are going into this. It's not just pitching. It's not just the defense. It's not just the base running. It's everything together. It's the fielding. I mean, last I looked, and NCAA hasn't updated their stats yet this week. We were around 150th in the country in defense. Not going to win many games like that.
No, I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. I feel like this episode seems to be one of our more depressing ones that we've done in the middle of the season, but that's just the state of where we're at right now. It's not clicking. I don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but there's just something that needs to be happening that's just not.
So I guess let's have this conversation. What do we need to do? What do they need to do to get back on track, or can they get back on track?
I will always say that they can get back on track. There will never be a point in the season where they are going to be completely out of it. That's just the way that baseball is. That's the way that this program is. You look at this, at the roster, you see all the names that are on there, the top 200 recruits in the country that we've brought in, the guys who will go on to be future major league draft picks. We will never be out of it until we're officially eliminated from playing any more games. With that being said, my biggest concern is definitely the pitching. There's a lot that's gone wrong, and I for one might be a little bit biased because I will always see the game through the lens of a pitching staff. Definitely something that I feel like I can critique a little bit better. There's something going on in the pitching staff that is not landing. And I look at what we have done in the past. You got your Bobby Millers, your Reed Detmers, your Zach and Nick Birdie, the guys who have come in and just, All-American type pitchers. And, at some point, what changed? You and I think that there was just something that happened after the 2020 season got canceled. You look at COVID, and there just seems to be a massive shift in pitching stats, maybe even pitching philosophy that happened around that time, because you got guys who are going to the Cape, having great summers, come back, and it's not the same thing. Will Koger, for example, has gone to the Cape the last couple of years and has put together some pretty good numbers and just hasn't really found it at Louisville. So that seems to be a little bit harsh, but that's just the way that I view this team right now. I think that games are won and lost with pitching staff, and if anything is going to change, it's got to start with them first.
I was looking, I sent out a tweet the other day, and ERA of the last team ERAs of the last 10 seasons. Right now, Louisville is at 5.21 as a team ERA. And I understand it's hard to compare ERAs because the game changes from year to year, right? But if you look at where they're nationally ranked, Louisville didn't have a team ERA above 3.53 in the previous 6 years. The last four, it's been above 5, 3 of the 4 seasons. So something has drastically changed. Like you said, it's kind of been post-COVID is when all this happened. I saw somebody highlighted the other day as a field crew worker for the Louisville Bats, Al Greener. He used to run the kind of direct the band at University of Louisville, and he played the organ at baseball games. And that's about the time he stopped playing the organ for Louisville baseball. So I don't know if that's what it is, if we need to call Al and have him come back to Jim Patterson Stadium and start playing the organ again. But there's been a shift somewhere, because the ERA numbers, and not only are the numbers inflated, because I think runs are increasing across the board in college baseball. So it's hard to look at just the numbers. But if you look at where we rank nationally, 2021, 126th, 2022, 108th, 2023, it did dip down significantly to 24th. but this year we're back around 90th. And those numbers, you're just not going to see a lot of success. I don't care how well you can hit the ball. If you've got team ERAs, around 100th or worse in the country, it's going to be hard to win a lot of baseball games. I mean, it's just those numbers don't lie. We've seen a lot of successes from the offense. Napleton has looked phenomenal this year when he's in the lineup. Zion Rose, like you said, has come on strong. Lucas Moore, freshman, looks really, really good. A number of the older guys have even stepped up, but it doesn't matter how well they hit the ball if we're giving up that many runs night in and night out. And those ERAs, I'd love to dive into them a little bit more. Those ERAs are against, teams that include St. Bonaventure and, series against Youngstown State, teams like that. So I'd love to dive into a little bit more and look at our ERA against conference foes, because I think that would be an interesting stat to kind of dive into as well. Outside of that, the opportunities lie ahead. This team has a completely loaded schedule, which is good because there's, chances that we can pick up a plethora of quality wins. But on the flip side of that, if you don't win those games because you're playing top tier opponents, you continue to lose baseball games. So let's kind of look ahead at what this team is up against. On Tuesday night, Louisville travels down to Lexington, down 64, to take on a Kentucky team that right now they're as hot as anybody in the country. They're currently 24th in D1 baseball. They'll be ranked much higher than that this week when the new rankings come out, because they just went down and swept Ole Miss in Oxford, scored 38 runs in a 3-game series against Ole Miss. They've won 12 of their last 13 games. But unlike some of the other coaches on Louisville's campus, Dan McDonald has completely taken care of business against the Kentucky baseball team. 13-4 over the last 17 games against the Wildcats. But this is a different Kentucky team. It really is. We go back to last year, though. Louisville was not near as good as Kentucky was. They made it to a super regional. We didn't make the tournament. And my memory serves me correctly, I think we beat them 7-0 in the only game we played against them last year. So what do you think about the matchup? What are your thoughts on Kentucky if we were able to get the game in? They're talking about some bad weather coming through the area on Monday and Tuesday, so there's a good chance that the game may not get played. But if we do get to play Kentucky, how do you feel about the matchup with the Wildcats?
Oh, Kentucky's hot, but I wouldn't say that we're struggling really down in the dumps. I just kind of say that we're floundering around right now, just trying to figure something out. But when you play Kentucky, just throw all the stats out, throw out everything that's happened for the rest of the season. Emotions will be high. It's going to be a very good and very competitive baseball game. No matter what, you will not see a blowout one way or another. So it's going to be an entertaining game. I really hope the weather cooperates, because I'm going to be locked in from first pitch on this one.
I'm super excited about it. We're thinking about heading down to Lexington to see what the weather kind of looks like. So we're thinking about heading down there on Tuesday to watch it. I think you're spot on, though. You can, and this is any sport, any rival, kind of throw the numbers out. But I think Dan will probably approach the bullpen like he has recently on midweeks. It'll probably be a staff day for everybody. You'll see 1, 2, 3 innings at the most from any pitcher that he puts out on the mound. I don't know if we'll see Colton Hartman this week, just because he's been struggling a little bit lately. And I think this is a game that, Dan circles on his calendar, that this is a game that we need to win. And like you said, we hate to sound so down. We're not. We think this team has a ton of talent. I mean, you look at the recruiting rankings over the past couple of years, this team is absolutely loaded. This is the type of game, if you beat Kentucky, that can kind of kickstart an extra gear and get them back on track. And okay, you beat Kentucky, then you come back and let's say you roll off a series win against NC State. Okay, now things are looking up. So I think this is an opportunity that Dan knows that, hey, we get back on track against our rival, that's going to give this team a little bit of momentum and some confidence. And I think that's the biggest thing they need right now is just confidence. So beating your rival, who is, I would say next week's probably going to be top 15 team, beating your rival that's having that good of a season does nothing but give you a massive amount of confidence.
Oh, for sure, 100%. And like you said, we've continually sounded like we're pretty down. I would say the vibes aren't great right now, but there's still plenty of baseball to be played. It's very easy to jumpstart a nice little winning streak here if we can go out and take care of business in Lexington this week.
Yeah, and I think if we can weather the storm of this little stretch that we're on right now against some of the better teams in the conference, you've still got 3 games against Boston College, who's struggling. They're 15-11. You've still got 3 games against Notre Dame, who's 14-12. So you've got 6 games there against. They're not pushovers. I'm not trying to say that because they can win baseball games, but those are 6 games that you kind of circle and you're like, okay, those are 2 series that we can win. So let's say you find a way to go 5-1 in those 2 series and sneak a series win here and take another one there. All of a sudden, this team is back to 500 or better in conference. And if you get to 500 or better in the ACC with Louisville's schedule, you're going to find yourself into the NCAA tournament. And then from there, it's just house money.
Yep. Yeah, for sure. And speaking of NC State, coming up this weekend, and it's going to be another very, very big test. This NC State squad right now, currently ranked number 22, but definitely going to be moving up in the polls, just coming off of a sweep over Notre Dame. Currently sit at 18-7 with an 8-4 record in the ACC. 2-4 on the road though, so there's an opportunity to be had there. One thing I want to highlight is this pitching staff at NC State. It's very good staff. They've got arms that can throw deep into games. Some of you might remember the name Sam Highfill from the College World Series a couple of years back. He put NC State on his back during that entire run because they got hit pretty hard with COVID. So he's able to go deep into games. He's already got a complete game shutout under his belt this year. He's going to be the guy. That when I'm looking at a game where Louisville can really jump out and grab momentum, if you can get to Sam Highfill early and start to get in that bullpen early in the series, I think that once again, I think that we're looking at a series that is going to be a very tough series. And an Elliott Avent coach team is always going to be a very tough, gritty team to come out and take a series from. But I think that this is a very good opportunity for us to come out and start to get a little something cooking here.
I'll be 100% honest with you. I didn't know that Highfield was still on their roster. I thought he was good and gone by this point in time. So, kid can throw the ball, and like you said, Elliott Avent teams they remind me a lot of Duke, Chris Pollard coach teams. They're just tough. They're never out of the game. They're going to play clean baseball. Anytime I talk about NC State, I have to bring this story up, and I think you probably know where I'm going. This is back in 2016. NC State was coming to actually Louisville to play a series, and I laugh about it. It's not funny, but he and his puppy, I think it was like 10-week-old dog, it was a little small dog, were bitten by a copperhead right before the series, and he actually had to seek medical attention. And same with his dog, and he didn't make the trip down here. I just every time I think about Elliott Avent or his name is mentioned, my mind goes to that story. They were both fine. I think they both obviously recovered from it, but just a really super odd story that anytime his name pops up, that story comes to mind. But his teams, go ahead.
If my memory serves correct, didn't he end up getting the better of the snake and end up killing it afterwards?
I do believe he did. I remember reading the story. It's been a while since I've read it, but speaking of Avent and watching how his teams play on the field, that doesn't surprise me if he killed the snake, because that would be very reminiscent of what his teams do between the lines most of the time.
Yeah, the
Yeah,
very
no,
very on brand for Elliot Davis there.
yeah, his teams they're just tough. I mean, when you talk about teams that just fight, never quit, they're never out of the game. You look up that in the dictionary, you're going to see NC State because that's how they are. And you were talking about them a couple years ago when Highfield put his team on the back. They kind of got the short end of the stick out in the College World Series due to COVID at that time. I felt terrible for the program and him. Obviously, it's a tough situation. NCAA stepped in and kind of kicked them out of the tournament, and I think he's kind of had a chip on his shoulder ever since. And if I was a Louisville baseball fan, he's the type of coach that I would love to cheer for, and I do cheer for him. They're not playing Louisville just because I love the style that he plays, how exciting they are, and just how they approach the game.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have said it better myself. I'm a big Elliott Avent guy. Love the NC State teams, and it's going to be a good gritty weekend. That's a gritty team, and we just got to come out and take it to them early. That's the same thing goes against Wake Forest. You had to come out early, take advantage of the opportunities when they're given to you. You need to come up with a big pitch, come up with a big hit, make a good defensive play. Just play Dan McDonald style baseball that we've seen before, and we just got to get back to that.
And Dan has preached a lot this year. Kind of, you heard him say this over and over and over, is to move the baseball. And it sounds really simple, right? But when you move the baseball and put the ball in play in between the lines, good things happen. Look at what happened Friday night against Florida State, one of the best pitchers in the country. Just put the ball in play. They made a handful of errors. Louisville was able to take advantage of it and win the game. But when you don't, let's flash back the night before on Thursday night when they struck out 17 times. You don't move the baseball. 2/3 of your outs. You don't even make the defense work. It's just a lot more challenging to beat a good team like that on the road. I think this is a series Louisville can win. They can beat NC State. They can beat Kentucky. I'm not overly concerned that they can't. It's just that all three phases of the game have to come together this weekend and against Kentucky on Tuesday if we get the game in to kind of right this ship and get back on the right direction. Not to talk about Kenny Payne. None of us have jumped off the Titanic or anything yet. We're still all on board. But this would be a hell of a weekend to start a winning streak against a really good team to boost our resume and get some confidence and momentum as we head into the chunk of this ACC season.
The opportunities are there. Just got to take advantage of them.
That's the key, and that's at this point in time that is kind of what defines the season. I mean, we've got to win some baseball games against quality opponents. Which, let's switch gears because we've seen a lot of quality baseball on the pro ball side as well. The Major League Baseball just started, and if you turned on the TV at any point this weekend and watched a Major League Baseball game, there's a damn good chance that you saw somebody from Louisville on your screen or their name on the stat line, the tracker at the bottom, because Major League Baseball is just littered with Louisville baseball players right now. And every time I turn the TV on and see one of their names, it's just like, oh, there's another commercial for the baseball program. Oh, there's another commercial for the baseball program. There's another recruiting pitch for the baseball program. And I love to see it. And I keep up with it a little bit, but nobody keeps up with it more than you do. And I know you're just itching right now because you want me to stop talking because you want to talk about it. So I'm going to do that and let you take over and do your thing.
Hey, I appreciate it. I definitely appreciate it. You're spot on though. Louisville's got 9 guys on opening day Major League rosters this year. That's the most of any university in professional baseball right now. So here's the complete list. Both Bobby Miller and Will Smith are with the Dodgers. Henry Davis with the Pirates. Nick Burdi with the Yankees. Adam Duvall with the Braves. Brian Hoeing is with the Marlins. Reed Detmers at the Angels. Tyler Fitzgerald is with the Giants, and Chad Green with the Blue Jays. So a lot of, that's a really good mix. Some older guys who have hung around for a while and some fresh blood like Tyler Fitzgerald and Brian Hoeing that haven't been in the league for too long, but cracking an opening day roster is huge. Wasn't 100% certain that they would, so super excited that they were able to do it, and they made immediate impact right away. Before I get into that, though, before opening day, the first pitch on opening day, it was announced that Will Smith has signed an extension to stay with the Dodgers. He will be a Dodger for life. He gets 10 years and $140 million from the Dodgers. So super excited for Will. He's deserving of every penny. He's now the highest paid catcher in the history of Major League Baseball. Could not think of a guy who is more deserving of it. And just like I said, super, super happy for him. Can't wait to see what the next 10 years brings to him in LA. But the big storyline for Louisville pro guys this weekend was the pitching. Bobby Miller was absolutely electric on Friday night. Struck out a career high 11, dominated the Cardinals for 6 innings for his first win of the season. Reed Detmers picks up a nice win with the Orioles, over the Orioles. Just super crafty. Everything was working for him today. 5 innings, only gave up 1 run. Curveball was beautiful. Posted a few videos of it. He had hitters fooled just all afternoon. Super happy for Nick Birdy too. He's caught on with the Yankees this year. He picked up his first win today since 2019. So a little bit under 5 years between major league wins for him. If you're not familiar with his story, I recommend going to read up on it. It's super impressive that somebody can come back from everything that he has come back, and not only come back, but come back stronger than he was before and continue to just dominate the league. He's made batters look stupid so far through the season. Riley Thompson is in AAA with the Cubs. He's had 3 shutout innings over 2 appearances this weekend. He picked up his first win of 2024 as well. I don't think it'll be too long before he finds himself in Chicago's bullpen. And something a little funny here. Tyler Fitzgerald made his pitching debut today. Giants were getting blown out, and Tyler Fitzgerald pitched the 9th inning. Was not a scoreless ninth. He did, I believe he gave up a run, but just I'm a big fan of seeing position players pitch. Every once in a while, we get one. I believe that's our Louisville's first one to pitch in major league level. Drew Ellis did it last year in AAA, but it always cracks me up to see those position players get on the mound and have a little fun with it, even though their team's losing pretty big.
I always love your updates because you always throw stuff like that in there. I was reading your notes and I saw that Tyler Fitzgerald makes his pitching debut, and I was like, okay, wait a minute, this guy came through the program for that long, and we didn't know that he could pitch. And then I realized that okay, they put him on the mound in the 9th inning when they're getting the doors blown off of him. So that makes me feel a little bit better. I won't hold that against you, Coach Williams, if you're listening. So Tyler Fitzgerald, in fact, cannot pitch, and we should not have had him on the mound when he was in the black and red.
Hey, we don't know. When position players come in, they're just told to kind of lob it in there and don't get hurt. He's kind of done a little bit of everything though. During spring training, they had him working out at first base a little bit too. So, every once in a while you see some players play the 9 positions in 9 innings type thing. Don't be surprised if Tyler Fitzgerald becomes one of those guys before too long.
Yeah, I want to see him behind the plate. Let's see that in 1 inning before the season's over.
We've had a number of catchers into pro ball that never really caught at Louisville. That you're like, I didn't even know that you were capable of doing that. Like Lucas Dunn is one of those guys that's got a
Mm-hmm.
number of professional innings under his belt behind the plate. And you're like, I had no clue that you were even capable of doing that.
Speaking of catchers, and you talked about this, obviously this is a monumental contract for Will Smith, the largest contract for the history of catchers in Major League Baseball, which is just crazy to think about. Not only is he from University of Louisville, he's homegrown, he's from the city of Louisville, but right now we're trying to build a indoor hitting facility and a new complex with a pitcher's lab and all these things that we're seeing pop up across the country. And in order to build those things, we need money. So, Will, if you're listening, we need some money flowing into the program right now because we need to build that facility. I even posted a picture the other day on Twitter where I took the building that they proposed years ago and I marked out Kroger and I put your name across it. So we need some funds because we need to keep up with the Joneses and build these facilities that are popping up all over the country. And it starts with cash. So you've got a little bit of that now. So we could use some of it to build that indoor facility out in left field.
Will, if you're listening, in exchange for that money, we can let you come on the podcast. Pretty lucrative deal. I'm just gonna throw that out there. If you're listening, just send me a message, please.
Well, there's a lot of exciting stuff going on. Like we talked about, we've got a new basketball coach. We're jumping into the Final Four this weekend. Major League Baseball has just kicked up and ramping up. We've talked about that in detail. And Louisville plays their rival Lexington in Lexington this week. Hopefully, if we can get the game in due to weather. And then another massive series next weekend in the ACC against North Carolina State, a team that we can beat to get back on track and kind of get this season, back on the rails and get us back to playing the cleaner version of Louisville baseball that we haven't quite seen. So a lot going on, a lot of good things ahead, a lot of opportunities lie ahead like we've talked about. But in the meantime, we've just got to get back on ship. Fans got to show up this weekend. That's one big thing. When you go down to a team like Florida State and see 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 fans, it makes a big difference. So if we can get the fans to pack Jim Patterson Stadium this upcoming weekend, that'll give us a big edge over the Wolfpack. That's going to be it for tonight. But Aaron, go ahead and tell them where they can find your work, because right now you are kind of hot and heavy with Major League Baseball starting up.
Yep, that is exactly right. Got a lot of new content coming out on the Louisville Baseball Alumni Twitter page. So really appreciate all the support and the following that I get over there. Put a lot of time and effort into that. So very thankful for all the support that I've been given over the last couple of years of doing it, and looking excited to a good 2024.
And you can find us on Twitter at Third Central Pod, and you can find my account personally at Matt Sefcovic and on Card Chronicle. Want to wish everybody listening a happy Easter. Hope you had a good weekend with your families. And in the words of Sean Moff, we will see you at the ballpark.